India dangled billions of dollars in subsidies at the world's most powerful chipmaker. TSMC said no. Then India went around them and partnered with their smaller rival instead. What actually went wrong, and what it reveals about how the semiconductor world really works. In December 2021, India announced the Semicon India program. The headline number was massive, more than $10 billion committed to building a semiconductor ecosystem from scratch. But the subsidies went deeper than that. Gujarat state alone offered up to 40% of capital costs on top of the central incentives. Full reimbursement of stamp duty, heavily discounted power and water, land subsidies that reached 75%. On paper, this was one of the most generous incentive packages any country had ever laid out for a fab. The pitch was simple. Come to India. We will cut your costs in half. We have a massive engineering talent pool, and we are a strategic U.S. ally in Asia. For context, TSMC was simultaneously being offered similar deals by the United States, Japan, and Germany, but those countries were not building from zero. They had existing supply chains. They had vetted talent pipelines. They had governments with semiconductor track records. India was offering money and hope. That is a different category. What we know about TSMC's rejection comes almost entirely from supply chain reporting out of Taiwan, sourced to people close to the company's leadership. TSMC never issued a formal statement. The company simply declined and moved on. But CEO C.C. Wei has been consistent in public speeches about what actually drives fab-siting decisions. Money is not first. Ecosystem readiness is. Talent availability is. Geopolitical stability is. Customer proximity is. Subsidies matter, but they are not the deciding factor. India had a critical problem on every single one of those criteria, except money. Start with talent. TSMC operates at the absolute frontier of semiconductor manufacturing. A single fab requires thousands of engineers with expertise in photolithography, process engineering, materials science, and yield optimization. These are not generic roles. They are specialized and rare. TSMC had already been drawing down its talent reserves for years. It was sending experienced engineers to Arizona, to Japan, to Germany. The Taiwan semiconductor industry was experiencing a talent crunch that TSMC itself could not fully solve. Building a world-class fab in a region where semiconductor manufacturing had never been done at scale? That would have required poaching dozens of senior process engineers from Taiwan or from competitors. It would have taken years. TSMC did not have that luxury. Then there is the question of what India was actually asking TSMC to build. All of TSMC's recent investments overseas have been in advanced technology nodes. Arizona is getting 5 nanometer and 3 nanometer production. Japan is getting 7 nanometer. Germany is getting specialty high-power semiconductors. These are the leading edge. These are where the profit and the strategic value sit. India does not have the infrastructure to support that kind of manufacturing. You cannot spin up cutting-edge semiconductor production without supply chains that have been refined over decades, without vendors who have already shipped equipment to 100 fabs, without utilities and logistics that understand the specific demands of extreme manufacturing. TSMC would have been building not just a fab, but inventing an ecosystem around it from scratch. That is not TSMC's job. TSMC is a manufacturer, not an ecosystem developer. And more than that, it is a company that moves cautiously when it comes to geopolitical risk. The last piece, and arguably the most important one, is that India's incentive system was fragmented. The central government offered one package. Gujarat offered another. Different utilities had different terms. Project closure meant navigating a patchwork of Indian bureaucracy that had never successfully landed a global fab before. Compare that to the United States, where the CHIPS Act created a clear, unified framework. Compare it to Japan or Germany, where governments had decades of experience working with multinational manufacturers. TSMC looked at all of this and made a rational decision. The risk and friction were too high. The return on complexity was negative. The company had other options that were safer. Here is what did not get reported widely. TSMC's rejection of India was not unique. At roughly the same time, TSMC also declined formal fab proposals from Singapore and from Qatar. Both offered substantial incentives. Both were geopolitically stable. Neither worked. What this pattern reveals is that TSMC has become something more than a manufacturer. It has become a geopolitical gatekeeper. TSMC is not choosing fab locations based on a spreadsheet of costs and incentives. It is choosing based on a calculus of where it can operate safely, where it has government backing, where its technology will not be at risk, and where it can align with its own long-term survival. Taiwan is an island that sits at the center of the world's most volatile geopolitical flashpoint. TSMC makes the semiconductors that every advanced weapon system, every AI model, every defense network depends on. The company has understood, especially after 2020, that its survival depends on geographic diversification into allied countries, the United States, Japan, Germany. Not neutral countries, not non-aligned countries, allied countries with formal security relationships to the United States. India, by contrast, does not have a formal security alliance with the United States. India is a key strategic partner, but it maintains a non-aligned foreign policy. It does not have a trade agreement with Taiwan. It recognizes the One China policy. From TSMC's perspective, India is not a natural place to move strategic manufacturing capacity. It is too complicated. The geopolitical risk profile is too unclear. So TSMC said no, and India had to pivot. In February 2024, India's government approved the Tata Electronics semiconductor project. In September 2024, Tata signed a technology transfer agreement with Powerchip Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, or PSMC, of Taiwan. Here is the trade-off that India accepted. Instead of TSMC, the world's most advanced chipmaker, India got PSMC, the world's seventh-largest foundry. Instead of cutting-edge technology, India got mature nodes. The Dholera fab, which is under construction in Gujarat, will produce chips at 28 nanometer down to 110 nanometer technology. That is a generation or more behind what TSMC brings to Arizona. To put this in perspective, TSMC was commercializing 28 nanometer production around 2011. That is 13 years ago. The chips that will come out of the Dholera fab when it opens in 2026 will be using 13-year-old technology. That said, here is what India is actually getting. PSMC will transfer design and construction knowledge. PSMC will license a broad portfolio of semiconductor intellectual property. PSMC will provide engineering support during the ramp-up, but crucially, PSMC will not run the fab day-to-day. Tata Electronics will operate it independently. The Dholera fab is planned for 50,000 wafers per month of capacity, and it will focus on high-performance computing, automotive, IoT, communications, and data storage. All of those are real markets, but 50,000 wafers a month of 28 nanometer production in 2026 is not going to move the needle on global semiconductor supply. For context, TSMC produces wafers in the millions per month across all its facilities. The total investment is $11 billion. That is similar to what India offered TSMC, but the capabilities are fractionally smaller. India is not getting TSMC. It is not getting cutting edge. What it is getting is a domestic manufacturing foothold, a place to build semiconductor expertise, a foundation that maybe in 10 or 15 years could become something larger. And India is not stopping with Tata. The government has approved 6 chip fabrication projects in total. There is a joint venture between HCL Group and Foxconn near Delhi. There are compound semiconductor facilities in the pipeline. The Semiconductor Mission 2.0, announced in the 2026 budget, commits 76,000 crore rupees in additional incentive support. That is approximately $9 billion more. India is not giving up on semiconductor manufacturing, but it is doing it without TSMC. It is doing it with second-tier partners. It is rebuilding the entire pitch from the ground up. The TSMC rejection of India is not really a story about subsidies or talent or ecosystems, even though all of those are factors. It is a story about how power works in the semiconductor world in 2024. TSMC has consolidated so much manufacturing capacity, so much technological lead, so much strategic importance, that it has earned the ability to choose its partners geopolitically. The company does not have to justify itself. It does not have to explain. It just says no, and governments have to accept that decision. The United States, Japan, Germany, they all got TSMC fabs because they could offer something India could not: political alignment with the United States, mature supply chains, and a security framework that made TSMC comfortable with transferring strategic technology. India could offer money. It could offer land. It could offer a massive engineering talent pool. But it could not offer the geopolitical certainty that a state-of-the-art fab requires. And TSMC, as it has grown more critical to global security, has become more selective about where it spreads its most advanced technology. This has a downstream effect on every country that is not in the US-led alliance structure. If TSMC will not come, then India has to build with whoever will. If you are Poland or Vietnam or South Korea, you are watching TSMC's decisions and calculating whether you have the geopolitical weight to attract the world's best chipmaker. Spoiler, most countries do not. TSMC is not just a company anymore. It is a choke point. It is a strategic asset that governments compete for. And that competition is being decided not in the free market, but in the space between geopolitics and technology. Here is the thing that makes India's pivot to PSMC actually interesting. India might be playing a longer game. By building its first fab with PSMC instead of waiting for TSMC, India is doing several things at once. It is proving that it can execute a complex manufacturing project. It is developing a domestic talent pool in fab operations, not just design. It is building a technology node that is commercially useful right now, even if it is not cutting edge. And it is positioning itself as a place where semiconductor manufacturing can happen outside of the traditional US allied supply chain. That last point matters. India is not aligned with the US in the way Japan or Germany is. If geopolitical tensions between the US and China escalate, if supply chains fragment further, India could become a third anchor. Not leading edge maybe, but independent. And in a fractured semiconductor world, independent capacity is worth something. TSMC said no in 2023, but in 2026, when the Dholera fab opens, India will have semiconductor manufacturing. It will not be TSMC's manufacturing. It will be Tata's and PSMC's, but it will be real. And that changes the calculation for every other company in the supply chain looking at India. Samsung might look at India differently. Intel might reconsider. MediaTek, which makes most of the world's smartphone processors, might see an opportunity. The value of being the only advanced chip maker in India drops when you are the only one. The value of being a strategic partner in a diversified supply chain rises as that supply chain diversifies. TSMC's rejection forced India to build without it, but that refusal might have inadvertently created the conditions for India to become important to semiconductor manufacturing in ways that TSMC alone never would have delivered. The semiconductor story is not about who builds the most advanced chips. It is about who controls the places where chips can be built. Subscribe if you want to understand how that power game actually works. Next, we are breaking down why the US CHIPS Act is failing to do what it promised.